Hey everyone, welcome to Artful Impact, another session with another artist. Today we have 𝗦𝗧𝗥𝗡𝗪𝗥𝗑𝗘𝗡, who is an amazing, brilliant screenwriter based in Sydney, Australia, but a lot of her works have been exported all around the world, including The Perception, Wake. Welcome, Elizabeth. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi. Thank you for having me on your show. So I've been writing for a very long time. And in that time, I've written short films, web series, and a couple of feature films. I'm still trying to write more. I don't think I'm there yet, but I'm so honored to be on your show. Thank you so much.
So tell us, how did you get into writing? Like, was it always something that was on your mind, or was it something that you kind of fell into one day? Tell us that moment.
I actually wanted to be a novelist when I was 14, but then I realized that I didn't have the stamina to keep writing. Because with novels, you have to write a certain quality and write that for like 100,000 words, right? But with screenwriting, it's like less than that. Like a page in a screenplay is just like dialogue, character names, description, that's it. So it's very fast to write. Though my dream is still to write a novel, so hopefully maybe one day. I don't know, not yet.
So what was your first screenplay and what did it look like? What was the story?
Okay, my first screenplay I wrote when I was 16. It was called Perfection. And the story was about a child robot assassin who falls down to earth and starts integrating with society. And she befriends these two boys who are bullied in school. That's the story. So I wrote that, and then I think sometime later I realized that James Cameron had a very similar story in the works called Battle Angel. And I was like, oh damn it, that's okay. I still watched it. It was good. It was good.
That's great. So what was your first script that got made into a film? Like, what was your experience with that?
Okay, my first one would have to be, my first short script that was made was Mr. Ghost. I wrote that when I was about 21, 22. And I wrote that along with another script called The Constance. And I posted it online somewhere, and then somehow some Melbourne director found the log lines and he really liked it. So I sent him the script and then he wanted to make it. And that was it. I didn't hear from him again for a couple of years. And then later, fast forward to 2016, he's like, oh, hey, Elizabeth, I finished it. Here it is. And I watched it and it was really good. I think both of those short films had a budget of $25,000.
Wow.
And I shot in Melbourne. So it looked really, really nice.
It's really funny because I had a meeting with a producer in Melbourne, and they're like, oh yeah, you know, there's this woman that we know, and she wrote like one of our films. She's Sydney based. You should connect with her. It's 𝗦𝗧𝗥𝗡𝗪𝗥𝗑𝗘𝗡. And I'm like, 𝗦𝗧𝗥𝗡𝗪𝗥𝗑𝗘𝗡. That's my sister. How the heck is she making films? Like, what's going on? You know, it kind of spun me out. And then I found out you wrote it. I'm like, oh my God, you freaking right. Like, this is so cool. So it's sort of interesting to see how your trajectory kind of like, you know, you wrote stuff, you put it out there. I think there's an element what you do that might be quite different to other writers, is that you actually put your work out there. Like, other writers would probably be very protective. I've come across with a lot of writers in my time where they're like, no, I've been working on this script for 10 years and they're really holding on to it. And for you, you're just like willy-nilly just putting it out there. Why do you choose that path?
I think when you write something or when you're creating something, it's very personal because you put a piece of yourself into that work, right? And there's this protectiveness because you don't want the world to judge the work which means judging you, right? And I came to a point where I realized that a screenplay is a blueprint for a film. So I can write the best screenplay in the world. It can be like the best thing ever, tightest storyline, most developed characters. But if it is not made, then the work is only half done, right? Yeah. So I came to a point where I was like, okay, I have to start getting my work out there for it to get made. Because if not, then I might as well just go back and try to write a book, you know?
That's true. Now, but do you experience like writer's block during the writing process? How do you overcome it? Well, what's some of your tips and tricks over the years that you found that helps you keep going?
With writer's block, like, what is writer's block? You know, like sometimes you have writers, can't you just write it, sit in front and just write it? It's just words, right? But it's because everybody has a different cognitive thought process. So I don't know how other people consume information and how they churn it out. But when it comes to me and my writing, I understand that there's a reason for the button delete on your computer, because you can write whatever you want and you can still delete it. No one can see, you know, it doesn't matter. And I think a lot of people, once they write it and it's out of the system, once it's on something, on a document on the screen where someone else can see it, like when they look over their shoulders, they think, oh my God, that's a piece of me. That's a piece of my heart on the page. But it's okay. You can still delete it. It's fine. You know, like no one's going to come in and arrest you for writing the wrong thing. So for me, when it comes to writing, I just think I like to write quickly, right? The way I write is it comes from a place of passion, because I love watching movies. I love watching movies. If I could spend all day watching movies, that's what I would do. Watch horror movies after horror movies after horror movies. And that's why I'm always trying to get you to watch horror movies.
Yes. I try.
Right?
I try. I will get there eventually. There'll be a point where I'll be watching a horror film that really moves me. I'm like, Elizabeth, I want to do a horror. But so far, I think I'm kind of on a trajectory. I'm like, I want to do good stories and less genre or something like that. So I'll slowly get there. But you don't really just write stuff and put out there and that gets made and gets commissioned to be made. Now you're starting to move along your career where you are now collaborating with directors and producers would even come to you to be commissioned for work. Like how do projects get developed through the very conceptual end of things?
There are many ways a project gets its legs. I mean, like you might encounter an actor who's like, I want to write stuff for myself. I want to turn into a producer and write stuff that I can star in. Or you might meet a producer who only works in producing. Or you might find a screenwriter who has turned into a director. So there are many ways to get your work out there and up. With each and every person I've worked with, they have a different process. And no process is the same, right? So I have to talk to them and say, okay, where are you? And I have to determine and pinpoint where they are in their career and find, okay, how can I come on board and how can I help them with my screenwriting and how can we, help each other?
Now, have you had what's some of your eye-opening collaborations that you felt, this is weird, like how is it even, like this is even happening to me? Like, can you give us some examples of that? Because I'm sure it hasn't been like smooth sailing for you. There would have been experience where you're like, oh my gosh, like this is not really about the story, it's about something else, you know?
I find the term collaboration is used a lot, and people often use it as an excuse to not pay people, right? You'll meet people overseas, in America, in Australia. Let's collaborate. What they're saying is, you do work for me and I won't pay you. And if I find money, I'll pay you. But it's a big if,
So do you give them a bit of a check, like a background check? Like do you do all your research before?
I check everyone, Maria. Even like if I meet a dog on the street, I'm checking them up on IMDb, Look them up on IMDb, look at the credits, look at what they have done. If they're a producer, I try to find out what their role was, right? Because a lot of producers are people who have just put in money, right? Like I see a lot of Indiegogo campaigns, crowdfunding campaigns. Anyone could just give in $200 and be a co-producer. And when you work with them, you realize they don't know anything about producing. They know nothing about the process, how to package a script, how to package the financing, how to attach cast, how to start pitching it to studios. They don't know anything about that. So my advice is to learn, right? Even if you're just a writer, or even if you're just an actress, a cinematographer, you need to learn about film distribution. You need to learn, okay, if I put a piece of myself into this, is it going to go anywhere? And if not, how can I learn the skills myself where I can package my own work and I could, go off and make my own movie?
Yeah, that's great. Now, I forgot to tell the audience that you are our writer, 𝗘𝗟𝗑𝗘𝗡𝗪𝗥 writer as well. But I have to admit, like through the process of working with you on 𝗘𝗟𝗑𝗘𝗡, you went above and beyond. Like you were like the whip cracker. Like you knew things and you knew how to find more information to even get our indie picture. I was like struggling to get to the finishing line to finish the film, and you're like, okay, where can we put it? And it was quite exciting to see that you have invested interest in not only writing, not only seeing it be made into a product, but seeing where the possibilities of this project could go. Like, and I, totally like big ups to you on that. Now, for you, what do you think are the current trends, and development in the film industry? Like, do you feel like maybe people who are coming from like indie filmmaking background, do they have a pathway that they could go to be able to, get their films out there, seen, and also make money back or something?
So I think we have to understand there are two methods to filmmaking: indie route and the mainstream studio route, right? And you have to understand that not everybody who is an independent filmmaker wants to go to the studio route, because you hear so many stories about directors in Hollywood and their films where the studio interferes in the film and it's not what they want, right? Like we all heard about Zack Snyder and his film was Justice League, and what happened to his daughter. He had to step away. Another director came on board and it wasn't his vision. And that's what I feel like, because of that, and what happened to Batgirl last year too, was the whole thing was scrapped after being filmed. So because of that, a lot of filmmakers are moving away from the studio system, and they prefer to do it themselves. That's why if you look online now, there's so many courses on filmmaking, so many courses on film distribution. I think if you want to learn something, learn it. And it's so easy to learn too with the internet, internet all around us. Everyone's online. You want to know something, you can find someone who knows. You need to find someone who has that skill that you want to acquire, and then you learn from them. And then you acquire that skill, and then you move forward, and you find someone else who has another skill that you want to acquire. It's kind of like Mario, right? You're playing Mario, and you jump and you catch like a mushroom, right? Yeah, it's like collecting all these skills and acquiring all these things. So you need to kind of think of your mind as a sponge, right? Sometimes you need to wring it out, or maybe even change it sometimes because it gets moldy. But then you need to absorb as much information as you can and find out how is this information going to help me in my career and help me move forward with what I want to do and how to achieve my own goals.
Yeah. Now, going back to your screenwriting, like, do you come across other screenwriters that have a particular level of screenwriting that you're like, oh my gosh, that's a brilliant piece of work in terms of your peers? Or are you finding that there's more screenwriters or writers who think they're writing, but it just doesn't really hit a standard that you think that you would say is quality? What's your thoughts?
I think when it comes to quality, what matters is what is your end goal. Because not everybody wants to get their scripts made. Somebody just writes. Sometimes people just write as a way to express themselves creatively, and that's okay too. You don't need to write to a certain standard, a certain quality, unless you are trying to move on to the next step.
That's a good point. For you, what's your future directions? What do you hope to see in future in terms of your screenwriting career?
That's a big question.
Yeah, I can hear that from your breath.
I want to keep writing. I want to keep writing screenplays, getting more features made, maybe even dabble in some film producing a little bit. I don't know. I've been researching film distribution, film producing for the past 2 months, and it's quite interesting. So maybe that's where I might be leaning towards. I don't know. The future is a long way away.
Oh, I wanted to ask, what's the shortest time frame that you have written a feature script?
2 days.
What was that?
This was in 2017. I came up with a concept. It was a sci-fi comedy about an elderly couple and a baby alien. It takes place in one night, and okay, what you have to understand, 2 days sounds like a big feat, but really, I was really writing it in my head for 2 weeks prior to that.
What do you mean writing in your head? Like, what? I don't get that.
I had this song that I put on repeat. It was called UFO by 𝗦𝗖𝗥𝗑𝗘𝗡𝗪𝗥. You know that song?
No.
And, I know what I'm like. I saw a UFO and nobody believes me. That song. Okay, but that was awkward. I had that
You're
song on repeat.
on the side too.
I had that song on repeat for like 2 weeks, and I kept thinking about the story. But I didn't write anything.
Right.
I kept thinking of plot points in my head, and I remembered it too. So when it came to outlining, I spent 1 day outlining. I wrote everything I remembered. But all the plot points, all the characters, all the story, everything about the story. And I finished that outline in 1 day. And the next 2 days, I wrote that into a script. And I remember writing it when I got to the 20-page mark. I was like, oh, that's enough for today. But then another side of my brain was like, no, you have the entire outline. Just keep going. Okay. I kept going. So I finished it in 2 days, which is my biggest, most prized accomplishment. I have not been able to replicate that process. But that's why I have a lot of songs on repeat. So hoping I can, crank something out. Yeah.
So the film Perception, like how long, what was that process like, writing it and getting it out there?
So, okay, I came up with the concept, I would say August of 2016, right? 2016, in July, I had just turned 24. I'm a little bit superstitious. So I was like, okay, this is the year of the monkey. It must be my year. I'm sure like if I were to do something, it will be this year, and I'm sure the luck would be magnified by the heavens or whatever. So I went off and I thought to myself, okay, I have been writing so many feature scripts in the past, but why have they not been made? And I started to dissect the reason, and I pinpointed, okay, because my budget has been too high, or I've been writing for a big scale. So I thought, what can I do that's different that I haven't done before? I have never written a micro budget feature before. So I came up with the concept of a micro budget psychological thriller that took place in one location starring 3 characters. I wrote the outline. So from conception to completion of the screenplay, it took me 3 weeks. And when I finished writing that, I put it online everywhere. And I went on Craigslist. Now, for those of you in Australia who don't know Craigslist, it's like Gumtree of America, right?
The Gumtree of screenwriting?
Yeah.
This stuff, okay.
Yeah. So I started answering all these Craigslist ads, and a few of them were dodgy. You could tell.
How?
I remember seeing one ad saying, "Oh, I'm looking for a female screenwriter who has to live with me."
What?
I'm like, what? Well, I don't understand. How is that going to affect my writing? Huh?
Yeah. For reals?
Yeah, it was a real looking for seeking female collaborator. And like and they put like a list of things that you had to do. You had to like live with them, like be on site, as in the house, the living room.
Jesus.
And write from there a few days a week. It was weird.
Wow.
I guess they were looking for a roommate. I don't know. Yeah.
Oh God, that would have been pretty scary. Okay. What else? What else? And yeah.
And I think I had like a couple of responses from directors who read the script, who really liked it. One guy ghosted me. I don't know where he went. I don't know. I hope he's doing well. I don't know. And then one guy really liked it, and he's like, "Oh, my producing partner is looking for something else." That's fine. And then I found a director called Jensen Nolan. He's a music video director, and I saw his showreel, and I thought it was amazing showreel, like really high quality stuff. So I sent him an email, and then he emailed me back saying, yeah, he would love to read it. He read it, and I think it was, I sent it on the 27th of November, and he replied back on the 4th of December saying he read it and he loved it and they're going to make it. So and then we jumped on a Skype call, because back then it was Skype, not Zoom. And then, yeah, that's how it got started.
That's amazing. It feels like to me in America, like things move much more faster because they're making stuff more. Like the fact
much more faster.
And then within a week, they're like, yep, we're going to make your script. And they make it, right? Within like several months, they're ready. And for you, I noticed when you're working with people in America, the process is quite different, right? Because you're quite involved. You get to see casting tapes, you get to work with actors. You really are along the process of the making of a project.
I think you're involved as much as you want to be involved, right? Because in the early days when I wrote my short films, my short scripts, I would just give it to them and they would pay me, and that was it.
Wow.
That was it.
Transactional.
and that was it. Transactional, because I wasn't that interested in writing short films anyway. When it comes to features, I'm really much more invested because it's like 90 pages, man. I want to see that on the screen. And also because I'm writing what I love to watch, horror. So I want to see that. And I love to, and because like you and I, Marie, with Phoenix Eye, we're making features and we're moving on to making, a trilogy. For those that don't know, we're working on that.
I'm sweating hearing the word trilogy. I'm having a bit of a seizure here. I'm thinking about it, but yes, we are indeed.
Yeah. So now that we're doing that, I find that I need to ask more questions, learn as much as I can, so that I can take that knowledge back to Phoenix Eye, and then we can distribute that information among ourselves, right?
Yeah. But you know what I find out? Like I find that in Australia, the creatives, they're all kind of like isolated. I'm starting to see a trend where there's like, there's a lot of our peers, but they're also like working separately in their own projects and hoping that it'll get distributed. Is that the vibe you're getting?
Yes, and I don't know why. because writers, I understand the way we write, it's very isolated. We work by ourselves, right? Now, I remember growing up, you used to be like, Elizabeth, you're always in front of the computer. What are you doing? I'm writing.
I remember the freaking couch was like, there's a dip where you were sitting on, It just shows how much time you spent in that one spot over a laptop just doing this, it was commitment.
Yeah, that's funny that you brought that up, because a couple of months ago, I actually went to the library because I wanted somewhere quiet to write my scripts.
Yeah.
And I was writing, and apparently there was a workshop going on next door.
Yeah.
And I'm writing, and I stayed there for, I think, about 4 hours writing.
Uh-huh.
And then this old man comes up to me, and I'm like, oh, yes. I took out my earphones, and he's like, oh, you've been here since morning. And I'm like, so embarrassing. But who is this man, and what makes me think? He just comes up to me, you've been here since morning. I'm like, oh, okay. I better move.
You better move. You better find another seat. Otherwise, you look freaking suspicious, man.
But I noticed every time I talk to you on the phone, you're always at cafes too, right? You're always working.
Yeah.
Like producing. Yeah. See? It's the same thing, but different setting.
I do. I know what you mean, because I'm like, okay, I can't stay for too long because people start to notice. They do.
Yeah, they notice.
Else is like more like, you've been here for a bit too long, and then,
like, is she a part of the furniture?
And what I'll do is I'll walk out and then I'll come back in, I'll find another spot and I'll keep sitting. You know what I mean?
Come back in with a moustache.
Yeah. I mean, libraries, cafes, wherever there's electricity, there's a toilet, I'm good. That's cool. So so in Australia, like there is that sort of sense of people, like I think people creatives that are just making their baby projects but not really having that sustainability? Like could it be like they're just making a project to express themselves and that's it, or are they looking more for like long term, what or they're just hoping that that project that they make is going to land somewhere and they're going to get to another place, or a combination?
I think with 90% of people I meet, it's always about hope, right? But hope does not translate into action. You need to take action for things to actually happen. You cannot just write it and think, okay, that's my job done. I'm gonna, you know, put it on one website and that's it, and hoping someone, you don't know. You have to like email people, make phone calls, you know, talk to people, go to networking events. There's a lot that goes into getting a script picked up, and it is tiring. It is so tiring. And I have social anxiety, so it's very difficult for me to actually go to these events and network. So because of that, I spent many years perfecting my written pitch, right? And that's why now when I send people emails, they reply to me because they like it. And I had this director reply back to me. This was like years ago, and he was like, "Oh, I don't really like the story. It's not really my thing, but I just want to say your pitch was amazing." I was like, thank you. You know, so yeah, because I was lacking in one area, I had to kind of overcompensate in another area. Yeah, and that's what you have to do when it comes to screenwriting, acting, or anything. If you're bad at one area, you have to find another. You have to find your strength and work on that.
Yeah. Now I'm noticing, like, now that you're getting commissioned to be in writer's room and stuff like that. Like, do you find that, like, when you're in a writer's room, you really got to have to turn on the pitching skills, like being able to convey your ideas as well, right?
I thought at first it was going to be like that, but not really, because I realized if you're in a writer's room, you're in there for a reason.
Yeah.
You're in there because they've already seen your work and they know what you can do, what you can deliver. So even if you're lacking in your verbal communication skills, it doesn't matter. They just want you in the room to pick your brain.
Okay. So it's not as bad as you thought then. So when do you need your pitching skills then, you think? It's more for events, you're saying, right?
More for events. And really, I needed the pitching skills years ago. But now that, you know, where I'm at with all my credits and, you know, like, I would say you kind of do a better job of pitching me than I do of pitching.
But you know what? I think it's easier to pitch you because you actually have a body of work. So for example, think, oh, can I see some samples? I can send some scripts over. You can't like pitch a good script if it's a shit script, right? So the writing itself will sell. That's what I've noticed as well. So it's just more for you. It's just more that people just need to know that you exist. How sexy is that? You just need to exist.
But what's difficult is when you pitch a script, when you send your writing sample, it's not very easy because you have to get them to read. Get them to read it, right? Get them to read it. Get them to read the entire thing. Get them to like it. So there's a series of steps, a series of mini goals that you have to hit.
Yeah.
And a lot of scripts that are sent to me, I like to use the butter chicken analogy. It's a bit weird, but okay. So when you write a script,
what is that? Tell me.
Okay. When you send your script to a producer, director to read, it's kind of like inviting someone over to your house to eat butter chicken, okay? The butter chicken, you put so much work into, maybe masala powder, cumin, cardamom. That is your story. That's not your script. That's your story. That's a story that you cultivated, you spent many months over writing. Now the agent or the reader, the producer, whoever it is, they have to get in their car and drive to your house to eat the butter chicken, right? But along the way, there might be like detours, or they might hit a pothole. They might get a flat tire. They might run someone over. All those little obstacles, all the little obstacles along the way. That's your grammatical errors, spelling mistakes, poor formatting. That's all that. That's getting in the way of them consuming the story. So as a writer, you need to clear the path to your house and make it as easy as possible for them to eat your butter chicken, right?
Yeah, I love your butter chicken analogy. It's obvious that you have a fascination for butter chicken. It's been on your mind since to Melbourne writing in the writer's room. It's butter chicken.
Butter chicken was delicious.
Yeah, okay. So there's so many different factors. And for you, it's like you obviously do a lot of things to, you take action, but you're also assessing whether things work or not, right? And then you just keep doing that. Like there's no, because I sometimes I meet writers who are like, oh, if only I get that one break, if someone just reads my script, that one break, it's like what one break?
I hear that a lot too.
And same with actors and directors. One break. What one break? Like I can't find that one break.
I think what people don't realize is once you get there, or once you get to that place where you've dreamt of going, there's still work. There's still a lot of work in front of you. People think once you get there, it's hunky-dory. It's not. It's work after work after work after work. And what you should strive towards is getting to a point where you're able to, you're financially stable, right? Where you can financially support yourself and you're still able to do what you love doing, and you're still doing the work, you're still getting paid for it. That's the point where we all want to be at.
Mm-hmm. And for you think to be able to do that is to kind of, know that, yes, you got to have your, job, but then also all your spare time you have, work on your craft. There has to be working it to a point where it's good, that people would want it. Like there needs to be a demand. Hey, some people are like, yeah, I'm an actor, blah, blah, but nobody wants to hire me. And it's like, well, and I sometimes I see their showreels like, oh man, I would burn that showreel, like stuff like that, right? So it's very important to have that sort of self-awareness is a huge thing. Yeah.
Self-awareness, and I think people need a level of risk-taking. A lot of people are so used to being in their comfort zone. They don't want to leave it. Once you tell them, they might come to you for advice. Oh, I need help with this. You give them advice, but what we don't realize is when we give advice, all the tips, are something that they need to get out of their comfort zone and do.
Yeah.
And a lot of people aren't willing to do that. They're like, thanks for the tips, but in their minds, they can't do that. They're not going to do that. And so when you go off, they're going to retreat back into their comfort zone, and they're going to stay there, and they're going to stay in their little bubble, and they're going to develop an external locus of control, which means that they go through life thinking that their life is determined by external influences, and nothing they do is going to make a difference. But what they should be doing, they should turn that into an internal locus of control, which means that your actions do matter. Your actions do change the trajectory of your career and your life. You just have to work out a system, make up your own system where you need to implement trial and error. You need to do things. Okay, that's not working. I need to go back, reevaluate, self-reflect where I went wrong. I need to find another way, and then keep doing that. And if you need help, outside help, go ask someone. It's quite simple, but in theory it's simple, but when it's harder to do.
Yeah. And I find, personally, I find that people who have this external locus of control, I feel like if they were to flip it around and they were to apply it internally, it brings a lot of insecurities. There's a lot of things that they have to face. And if they're uncomfortable with facing that, yes, they've got these, attributes that are not working for them, it's too much to confront. They just want to shut down, and you go, well, it's the externally. I need to find it externally. But in essence, they'll never be able to figure it out and really get what they want because they're not really coming to the terms of themselves. You know what I mean? And I find that even talking to these people and then giving them advice, they'll listen to it, but it just goes across. It's like, and then I wondered to myself, maybe they just love the drama, what they're in at the moment, right? They must be, because why would you want to repeat the same mistakes over and over and over again? Why? Unless you really feel that identifies who you are. Like you can write a script, doesn't matter if it's good or bad, but you can write a script and you made it. You know what I mean? So I don't know, maybe people need to really self-reflect and go, okay, where do I really want to go? if I can I dare to really dream further than what just doing a thing, but really doing it a thing at a particular quality. Maybe it could be an international thing, maybe it could be something that's global, you know, really push the barriers. But I find in Australia it's a bit different, because there's this tall poppy syndrome stuff, and then you've got crab mentality. So all these like freaking things about pulling things down, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. Do you get that?
I find people, every action is determined by a person's emotions, right? And when people do that, it's because they're looking for a quick fix. Quick fix. They're not really looking for a long-term solution. They just want someone to listen in the moment. That's it. That's why you get people like coming to you with all their problems. You give them advice, but they don't take it. They're like, oh, thank you so much. They'll go off, do the same thing again, and come back. And it's like a cycle, right? It's because they want a quick fix. They want someone to listen to them. People aren't able to change, you know, until they're ready to change. And that has to come internally. You cannot force someone to change. It has to come from within them. Yeah.
And I think in a way you can always assess someone by like what I always go is, okay, I've given someone this advice and we've connected, and it feels like this is what they want to do, but then 1 year down the track they're in the same spot. And then you can go, oh, okay, I get it now. You actually, you know, maybe the change isn't what you really want, you know, because you can tell, because you can kind of go 1 year from now when you meet up with them, when you see them, where are they at? Are they ahead? Are they backwards? You know? And for me and for you, we're always trying to find ways to go expand, but not like expand, like, you know, try to like, you know, really get in the industry and show people who we are, but really just seeing how we can collaborate with people who have more skills or different knowledge, you know, rather than just being around in our own circle. And for me, once I got to America, I'm like, oh my God, there's so many brilliant people. I'm like the smallest of them all. And I was so excited because it just one of the first few moments in my life, I was like, wow, I get to learn from people. I'm the shittest out of everyone. You know what I mean? Time to learn. You know, so I'm really excited. But I think, you know, people who come to America might not have the same way. I mean, if you feel like being criticized or feeling that you're not good enough is going to stop you from doing stuff, then that's probably the opposite. So, yeah.
I think what people need to understand is that their work is not their personality, right? That's why when people get their work criticized, and they ask for feedback, and people say things they don't want to hear, they take it personally. They think it's attacking them, but it's not. People have to be able to separate the work and the personality. Yeah, you're here, your work's different. Your work is just an expression of yourself, but it's not you. So when people are criticizing your work, they're trying to make it better. They're not trying to say anything about you. They're talking about your work.
Damn, all I have to say is move over, Brian Tracy, Dr. Phil.
I love Brian Tracy. I love Brian Tracy.
You love Brian Tracy. Elizabeth H. Boo is coming around the corner. And it's so interesting because for you, you're like, you know, on the outside, just a screenwriter, but you do quite a bit of introspecting. You know, I can see that you really try to figure out the human condition and why people do certain things. And I feel like that also helps you write, you know, the characters that you write and how to make it really authentic and also engaging for people to read, because they can feel that there is this genuineness. You know, is that something you think writers should develop to be able to write better? Or what's your thoughts on how to become a better writer?
I think when it comes to writing, you always need a sense of curiosity. Always ask why. Whatever you're doing, whatever you're writing, ask why, right? If you're writing a script, look at the script formatting. There's like the scene heading, interior living room night. Why is it like that? It's like that because it's easy for the assistant director to know what scenes to film, right? So there's always a why in everything. And one of my tips is when you're writing a description, stick to 3 lines or less, right? If it's more than 3 lines, go to the next, have a space and go to the next line. Why? Because it's easier on the eyes, right? And also, you need to understand that people read from left to right, left to right, left to right. So when you're writing a script, you don't need to talk about the camera movements or anything, because the reader, they are the camera. As I'm reading, it's like magic. it's like my head is like a blank blackboard. As I'm reading, like subjects, animals, furniture, they all materialize in your head as you read. And it materializes from left to right, right? Yeah. So if you want people to imagine this character before this character, you need to put them, before that character. That's how you write. Yeah.
Now I come across a lot of, when I read a lot of scripts, like the newer emerging writers, they have an issue with dialogue. Why is that? Like, what's the issues that you come across when you read other people's scripts, dialogue, and how sometimes character voices sound the same? Yeah, expand on that.
A lot of beginner writers, they tend to self-insert themselves into the character. So when you read a script, you could tell, okay, that's the character that you want to play, or the character who you are in your head. And it's hard to tell, but I can tell because you can kind of feel it. You're like, oh, that's what you really want to say, your character. That's why when I'm writing, especially in the later years, I've been writing characters who are not myself. I wrote a feature script about a white guy in his 60s with a fear of water. Not me, but I find it helps to exercise your screenwriting abilities when you deliberately step into these challenges and try to write around them. Also, like I said again, it's like magic when you write. It just pops up. A lot of people, when they write, they already have the scene inside their heads. Okay? But where it becomes difficult is putting that scene onto the page so that the other person reading it can also see the same scene. Because no matter how clear my writing is, whatever I write, when I give it to you, it's going to be a completely different scene. It could be this, similar scene, but you're going to see it differently. Because what people don't realize is everyone has a different geographical default location in their heads. Which means if I'm reading a script that says interior living room 9, there's already a living room in my head. Right? It's going to be different from your living room, someone else's living room. The living room in my head is usually the one at my mum's house. Because I'm used to that living room. But if you talk to someone else, they have a default location in their head already. So when you're writing and you talk about the location, they see it in their minds. And when it comes to dialogue, I don't know, because I watch a lot of films and I really listen to people when they talk. So I find that I'm able to write it to make it sound authentic and natural. But a lot of people have, I realize they have problems with writing dialogue that is too on the nose. And what that means is, like, people don't really say what they mean most of the time. People are very mysterious and elusive when they talk, right? Yeah. And it's only sometimes when people spill their guts, maybe in like intense situations. It's not something that happens on a daily basis. Yeah. So I read a lot of scripts where there's like a bunch of dialogue that's very on the nose, and I think one easy tip is, when in doubt, take it out. So if you're not sure of something, just take it out. It's okay.
Okay. That line applies for multiple things as well. But yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to apply that to screenwriting. Yeah. So that's really good to know. But I just want to say thank you for joining in to Artful Impact and sharing your insider thoughts as a screenwriter, but also the nitty-grittiness of just some of those challenges that writers do go through, and just giving some advice on how people can kind of bust through it. But I love the fact that you started off just writing stuff in your living room and just putting it on Craigslist. Like, that's a pretty cool, point, right? Because a lot of people are either writing it and they're just hoping that it will just magically appear as a movie one day. We're not realizing that all the little steps to put your work out there, it means it accumulates to something. And eventually, if you keep doing that, and if you keep on writing things that are made and they look great, eventually you'll be, commissioned to be doing it full time and all that as well. So that's a really exciting, interview with you, because we get to hear your humble beginnings, but of course we know that you're going to be, you know, hitting internationally very soon enough. That's it from me, and thank you so much to Elizabeth 𝗔𝗡𝗅 for joining in.
Thank you, guys. And if I have to leave one advice, please remember the butter chicken analogy and always take action. Always take action, okay?